Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Ellen coming to you from St. Barts, and today we discuss why is the show on the pit, who is designing these days, why can't I have candles on stage, and what about my student loan, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
And Sistah.
Yes, and Sistah. Ellen's back with us today. Welcome back, Ellen.
Thank you.
Oh, it's good to have you here. There's too much testosterone on this damn show. And we need someone to keep us real. You know, Stan could be, Stan's gotten us in a lot of trouble lately, I don't know if you've been listening to the last few shows. Have you heard about this, Ellen?
No, what happened?
Oh, my God. Steve, do you want to fill in Ellen and our listeners who've missed the last two shows?
Well, I think if I'm going to bottom line it, we have ignored the contribution that Snoot Goldberg has made to this show over the last 5.5 years. And Snoot was feeling a little put out, and she called us out on it.
She literally called us out on it. And so
we had a collect phone call from
yes,
Snoot.
Collect. Station to station.
Okay, well, there you go.
So now we have issues with our legal team.
Okay.
And Snoot's the one who's been taking control of all this, actually. And she's been helping us because Fleck, Flock, Flare, and Glare, they've been driving around their Bentleys and leaving the riffraff to Snoot. It's really a problem. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. I think we may have smoothed it over. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. But everybody, welcome to episode 283. And Ellen, I'm sure you're on vacation for at least another 2 or 3 months until LDI.
Oh, very funny. Yes. I start in January and it's a nonstop marathon until Thanksgiving. So, yep.
Oh, my God. So you have Thanksgiving off, I guess, and maybe a month and a half, and then you start again, right?
This year's going to be really interesting because my daughter's coming back here with me on December 1st to help me pack and move. We have to move by the end of the year. And also in the middle of all that, we are celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary and moving. So I think I'm going to get a dumpster and just start throwing crap away as soon as possible.
Purge.
So
where are you moving to? You're going to stay on St. Bart, right?
Yes, we're just moving to a smaller house on the other side of the island that has a beautiful ocean view. And my husband says it's my fault because when we built our first house, I said, before I die, I really want an ocean view. And he used to say, look, if you want to see the ocean, go visit my mother. She has a great ocean view, which she does. But now we're also going to have one of our own.
She's got a condo somewhere, right?
No, she's here. And she has a beautiful little house right on the beach. And she's 89 and going strong. So God love her.
Oh, God bless her.
So how has hurricane season been there?
Well, so far, knock on wood, we haven't had any, but the Atlantic is beginning to churn up a little bit, and there's like 4 little yellow X's out there. So we're hoping that they all get direct tickets to someplace else.
Now, is your new spot on the other side of the island? Is it facing the incoming hurricane, or is the hurricane departing over you?
It actually has due west. It has due west view so that you sort of see a sunset, not all the way down to the waterline, but behind some nice little hills. And the hurricanes here do a funny thing. They swirl around. So there isn't necessarily any place that's better than the other.
That's true.
Okay.
What you hope for is that they keep going, that they don't stop. In 1995, one of the worst ones stayed over. It was like a Category 4,
Whoa.
And it sat over the island for 36 hours.
Oh, my God, that's
luckily,
horrible.
I know. Luckily, I was not here. I was at Plaza at the time. The last really bad one was in 17, Irma, and it was like a Category 7, if that even exists. But it went by really, really fast. But in the first one, more vegetation was destroyed. And in the second one, really like 85% of the houses on the island had some kind of a problem. It was tough. It was like a Katrina force thing. So hopefully keep your fingers crossed that this year they will not be bad.
All right. Well, we're going to have the semi-annual Light Talk Brain Trust Conference in St. Bart. Or have we had it already?
Great.
Did I miss that?
No, you better come down.
Okay. It'll be after hurricane.
After hurricane season, after LDI, and after we move, and we'll have a beautiful view for it.
Wonderful, because I must tell you, Lori's been saying, "Hey, when are we going to St. Bart?"
Oh, good. Well, come on down. You know that at LDI, we've been kidding for many, many years of doing a show here called LD Island. So get ready.
LD Island, the musical.
No, I like that.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get started. That's wonderful news. And congratulations on your new house.
Thank you.
And that's just fantastic. So welcome, everyone, to episode 283. And Steve has our first question of the day.
It comes from William in Ohio. And William writes, I have a show, The Odd Couple, in which the director has decided to raise the pit and block most of the production downstage of the proscenium. I have next to nothing by the way of positions to hang lights. Help. William, can I call you Bill? Bill, that's a bizarre question. Because you say he or she is blocking most of the show downstage of the proscenium. So it sounds like the set is breaking the fire curtain line right there somehow. Well, welcome to the big time. This is what directors do all the time. I don't want to do Odd Couple in an intimate little space. I want to take my 2,000-seat proscenium and make it into an intimate space. I think, it's hard to advise you without seeing technical information here. But I think the first thing I would do is I would have an honest conversation with the director about masking. Maybe the lights have to be exposed. So all of a sudden those upstage electrics can at least come in over the set and give you some backlight in there. I'm assuming that you've just hung every light possible in a box position that probably doesn't hit the orchestra pit, and a front of house position. So you've got probably a good driver's license lighting ready to go. I think you and the set designer and the director need to sit down and talk about what kind of structures are you going to put in that proscenium arch. Are you going to put some booms in there? Are you going to build some kind of trussing against the wall that you can put side light into? It's not magically going to happen. No matter how much the director wants no lights to be seen, once he or she moves on to the orchestra pit, that changes everything. So I think masking is the first thing I would look at, and the second thing I would look at is how do I put lighting onto the orchestra pit itself. You can pretend to mask the lights that are put on booms on an orchestra pit, but that's not going to work from the entire auditorium. Maybe that cleans it up for a few people. I don't know, David, have you ever gone down that garden path?
Let me tell you, I avoid shows like that, but they do happen. They do occur. It sounds to me, since The Odd Couple is a box set usually, I believe it's only one set, I would guess that the side walls of that set start at the proscenium and they go upstage. And then there's a back wall that's probably about 10 or 12 feet upstage of the plaster line that goes across. And then everything downstage of the plaster line is furniture for Oscar and what's the other gentleman's name? Oscar Felix, of course.
And
Felix.
The obligatory sofa and rug down there.
Right.
That's right. And if I remember correctly, Oscar was a sports writer, or he was a TV I think he wrote sports. But anyway, what did Felix do?
He was just he was divorced.
He was a nebbish. He was a professional nebbish. Anyway, yes, there's going to be a lot of front light in this show, obviously. And it's like Steve said, you could put some pit booms up. But the problem with that is masking. But like he said, you got to throw masking off to the wind. However, what you could do is you could bring in your first electric down far enough to get some backlight onto that apron. So at least you'll get some shaping light from the back. You could also do some diagonal backlight from that position. Box booms. So you have box booms. That's going to be your primary lighting position for a show like this.
What about the balcony rail?
A balcony rail is always useful, but the problem with the balcony rails, if you use too much of it, you're going to throw too many shadows onto the back wall.
Right.
And it depends on how high the balcony rail is.
Right.
Some theaters have, one or two balconies, and the higher balcony rail may be able to give you a nice low front light that's not going to bleed too far upstage. But like I said, I really think if I was doing that show, I would be relying on my box booms.
If it's an old theater, then maybe he does actually have box positions,
Right.
just like New York.
Well, also, like you said, if it's a regular box set, you could have lights outside the windows. You could have lights, behind it.
Oh, yeah.
What about practicals? Do they actually add light to a set?
It depends on the size of the theater.
Mm-hmm.
In most theaters, you have to augment the practicals with motivational lighting.
Right.
But however, all that being said, I think that's a very good point that you have all those opportunities of lighting through the windows.
Mm-hmm.
So, all that is important. But again, I just think that you're going to want to do primarily shape light and good front light from a high front cove position, which you probably have.
Right.
So it's a balance. It's a balance.
Bill's probably already done this, but there's also, this is the time to go to the house electrician and say, has this happened in the past? Have we done a show on the pit? And how did another designer solve this problem? What can you do as the production electrician to help me?
This one comes from Jenny in Pittsburgh, and she asks, are there any studies on breakdown by gender in design areas? And the answer is yes. The first one that pops to mind was done by a lighting designer by the name of Portia McGovern, who is also a woman of color and was very interested in finding out about gender parity among designers who work in LORT theaters, LORT being the League of Resident Theaters across the United States. And she wanted to know who was designing there and who gets hired to design there. And of course, what she discovered is that basically, except for costume design, all of the design fields are probably over 65% male. She did a second version of the study in 2020, and I think the results were pretty much the same. Scenic design is about 78% male. Costume design is definitely skewed female. Lighting design is about between 75 and 80% male. Sound design is between 86 and 89% male. Video projection is between 79 and 84% male. And all glommed together, the design fields are 64 to 70% male. So that's kind of sad. If you're a woman, I suppose.
It's shocking. It's bloody shocking.
Right.
I'm blown away by it. I didn't know those numbers. That's
right. You could look up her study. And also, American Theater magazine has done quite a few stories on the subject. Studies like new study, white men still dominate DC stages. In 2018, gender parity up, slightly off Broadway. So there are people, let's see, 2018 study shows women still underemployed off Broadway. So it's hard. It's really hard. And I know even like programming conference sessions for LDI or some of our Broadway lighting classes or things like that. It is, if you set yourself parity as a goal, you'd be hard-pressed to do it. And I always sort of say, well, the skewed male representation represents the industry as a whole, so it sort of makes sense because none of these fields are 50-50, except costuming, which we don't really cover at LDI. So it's hard. It is really hard. And a lot of the women that you see at LDI are in related fields. They're not necessarily in design. It's interesting.
It's unbelievable. And I'm kind of shocked because I've been teaching for a lot of years, decades, and I know Steve has as well. And I don't know if Steve's experience is similar to mine, but in my typical graduate class would be 80% female.
And where do they end up working?
They end up working either in theater lighting design, opera lighting design, or architectural lighting design. They're all successful. Not all, but most of them. I'd say about 80% of them are. So it always blows me away when I hear stuff like this because I know it's true because when I'm working in the theater, in the professional theater, my colleagues are usually men.
Right.
So I'm like saying, where are all the ladies? I just don't get it because as far as talent's concerned, I mean, come on, some of the greatest lighting designers in the world were women and are women. So I just don't get it.
Right. Well, keeping in mind that Portia's study was for the Lort Theater. When you go to Broadway, the designer that has the second largest number, I think the two designers who have the second and third largest number of Tonys are women. I think it would be Peggy Eisenhower and Natasha Katz. But surrounding them are a huge cadre of men, from Jules Fisher to Ken Billington to Brian McDevitt to, Ken Posner, So I think that there's a long way to go before we really do have any true gender parity.
As I look at American cinematographer, what it seems to me is, or maybe this is just who they choose to cover, I'm reading about more and more women involved in film. So maybe theater is not the direction they are going. Maybe it is film, maybe it is architecture, maybe it is industrial.
And why is that?
Probably money, and maybe it is simply what they're interested in.
Well, women usually are brighter than men, I'll tell you that right now. I have no problem saying that.
There's another thing, though, because, maybe like if you work in a theme park, like Paula Dinkle worked for Disney for quite a while.
Right.
And the architectural lighting firms, like Lisa Passamonte Green has her own firm, or you get hired to work at a firm, as opposed to being a Broadway designer or even a regional theater designer is freelance. And maybe that's not a life that appeals to a lot of women. Who knows? Maybe they prefer to work
at a firm. Yeah, the more steady work, possibly. Yeah,
possibly.
Like I said, they're brighter than we are.
Right. Maybe it's time for Light Talk to do another survey and see what the story is here. It is interesting because we've started the diversity in design scholarships, and I'd say that we probably have about 50-50 men and women who apply. But over the past 2 years, most of the recipients have been female. So we're rooting for them to stay in the field and, make a difference. And it's funny because when it comes to diversity, we ask them, one of the questions is, what underrepresented community, do you identify with? And a lot of them just say women in a men's world, or, LGBTQ women in a men's world. And I think that women still really feel that. I don't think the sexism is quite as rampant as it used to be, but I do think that they are still a minority.
Even in Lort theaters, it's the director who hires the designers. And if the director wants a woman designer, that director will ask the artistic director to hire the female designer. So maybe directors aren't asking as much, which means that they're not getting the opportunity to work with a lot of women in the smaller theaters, before they get to Lort.
Right.
Because that's how it works. I know that there are a lot of women designers in the LA theater scene. I know it for a fact. Right. I mean, because I know them. So why that's not getting up there, and continuing to Lort, and then obviously you said Broadway's better, but Lort is where most people work for money.
But if you know 10 women, do you know 50 men?
In my work, it's 50 men to 10 women easily.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know where this disconnect is happening. It seems to me like it may be happening between the director and the woman designer, because you'd think that director would be pulling them.
Right. Well, it's an interesting question. I think we should delve into this a little more, and we can get some women on.
Let's get some women on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But go back to who's directing the show,
right? And
if the numbers are skewed that way again, who is producing the show? If those numbers are skewed, then there's your answer.
Right.
I think maybe they need to be hiring more women directors. I think maybe if that was it, we would solve this problem, or at least address it, because these numbers, 80%, is shameful. All right, well, speaking of women designers, Emily from Santa Clarita writes, I am a first-year graduate student, and my university continues to raise my tuition. How do they expect me to pay back $100,000 in student loans by working in the theater? Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, really.
Minoring in investment banking is a good idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, find another job. I mean, it is a problem. And, we have some news over the past couple of weeks. President Biden signed a executive order that gives some relief. And it is a big deal. $10,000 to most people with student loans and $20,000 if you have a Pell Grant, which is terrific too. So that helps. But the big problem is universities raising tuition. Tuition raises are out of control and have been for a long time. Do you know when the California State University system started? Do you know how much tuition costs to go to a California State University for a 4-year degree?
How much?
0.
Wow.
And it has been rising regularly. Now, it's still affordable, but it's like $8,000 a year. Compared to other schools, that's affordable, but that's a huge, I think that's an 8,000% increase, isn't it? If you start at 0, or would you have to start at 1? I'm not a math person. So that's the problem. And the reason why tuition's going up, do you know what that is? I know Steve knows this answer.
Football.
Not football. It's Steve's salary. That's why they're raising the tuition so much. No, the reason why is, and they've done studies here in the California state system, my union did this, is that over the past 20 years, the number of professors have gone down in a university, and the number of administrators have gone up.
And they're getting rid of professors. They're getting rid of tenured faculty, going to, I think they call them professors of practice.
That's right. It's getting worse. So here's, this is the issue. And I don't know what these administrators do, to tell you the truth. All these extra administrators, they just come up with policies to justify their own existence. And the policies just, create more administrative headaches to the poor people that run the departments, and the faculty, by the way, and the students. So we've had this discussion in our faculty senate for many, many years, but nothing stops it. This monster grows. How is it in the private university, Steve? Do you see the same issues?
Well, okay. I think it's bigger than where you're going. I'm looking at the Department of Education site right now, and the average cost of tuition in the United States. And this says average cost for state residents is about $10,500. And for out of state, it's about $26,000. So, and if I look at private schools, it's about $35,000. I guess there's a hidden cost to universities, and that hidden cost is in this tuition. I doubt that they're putting in the cost of living. So I doubt that is including an apartment or dorm room and money. I doubt that is essentials you need to go to college. Right now, Texas, it says average cost for Texas. I'm looking at the Texas site. Average cost is $8,600 a year. Utah, $7,600 a year. Vermont, $16,000, and Virginia, $13,000. So, I mean, this is still a lot of money we're talking about. If I run those numbers, so I can see easily going to college and you're walking away without thinking much about it, a debt of about $50,000
at least.
So I think we're pricing people out of schools. Where there can be a real difference is the community college system in America. And all of a sudden you can go get that 2-year degree and you've invested about $6,000. And then you take that 2-year degree and you transfer that into that 4-year school. I saw something goofy yesterday don't quote me here. You can look up the numbers yourself. But it was kind of scary. 70% of Americans do not have a college degree. So you don't have to have a college degree to succeed in life. So all of a sudden, there is a very limited number of people who are actually going to these schools. Maybe that's a reason college tuition is going up. Maybe, as we say, there are too many graduate design programs. Maybe there are too many universities. Maybe some need to fall by the wayside. Or we need to convince more people that college is a good investment. But if you're in the trades, if you are a skilled worker, if you can build a house, if you can do electrical work, if you can be an automobile mechanic, if you can paint, if you have a serviceable skill, you will probably make more money than you would than going to college. So it's not, we've made college into something like a trade school. It's like if you go to college, you're going to have a great life and a great education. College is there to make you a better human being.
I think something happened in America starting in the 60s or 70s where there was such a rush to get everyone to go to college, and that going to, they used to call them vo-tech schools, vocational, technical. And, the kids in my high school who had to go to a vo-tech school or the vo-tech class, they were like humiliated. It was like, for the idiots. And now, like, the laugh is on us, all these liberal arts kids that can't get a job. And the guy that went to vo-tech is, making $100 an hour fixing refrigerators. So I think that there should be another emphasis on people who want to have those kind of jobs get trained. And they're, nothing wrong with being an electrician, a car mechanic, automobile repairman, whatever those jobs. And you don't necessarily have to go to college for. You go to the vo-tech school. The other thing is the interest rate. Apparently, the interest rates on these student loans can be as high as 30%. So like 10 or 20 years out of school, you may have paid already twice as much as you borrowed in the first place, and you're still paying off the interest. You haven't even paid off the principal. So somebody posted the other day on Facebook that they refinanced by getting a quote-unquote personal loan that they didn't have to say what it was for, and that the new loan was like 8%, while the original loans were 30%. So that really helps. But I think you're right that the whole system is skewed to give students that want to go to a good school, they're in a hole before they get out the door.
Well, the question is, what is a good school?
Well, right.
When I become philosopher king, I'm going to get rid of senior year in high school and allow you to do 2 years in a vo-tech school that the government pays for.
There you go.
Or 2 years in the military that the government pays for.
Or 2 years in community college.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then make a decision about what you want to do when you're 19 or 20.
Right, exactly.
But let's get people early into making some, giving them some useful tools.
Right.
I'm voting for you for president. That was in, or something similar to that was in the Build Back Better plan. Not getting into politics, but free community college was in there. And I don't see why it should not be free. It would make it much more attractive. And I agree with Steve 100%. Community college is where it's at. I just think you'll be much better off. But we have to stop this insane escalation of tuition because it's nuts. It's just nuts.
Okay, so you are listening to Light Talk, and today's Light Talk is sponsored by...
This is a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. You know the drill. It's tech. And everybody, and I do mean everybody, wants information from you. Where does that Q get called? Why is the psych read? What are those tech notes for tomorrow? After a while, it gets to be exhausting. You can't even concentrate on the task at hand because all you hear is, can it be brighter? Is that the psych color? Can that Q be different? Well, now there is a solution, my friend. Just repeat one simple phrase. That information is redacted. For example, the stage manager keeps asking, is that a 5 count or a 10 count? What do you say? That information is redacted. The director shouts, how about some light down left? That information is redacted. Or the set designer texts, can we have more gobos? You text right back. That information is redacted. If it's good enough for the FBI, then it's good enough for you. Be honest. How many times have you wanted to say, that information is redacted? This has been a public service announcement from no more 10 out of 12s.
That information's redacted.
And I'm pleading the fifth.
I have to say, Ellen, I really enjoyed the page of that FBI document you sent us. What was the one word that wasn't redacted on the page?
Ketchup.
Ketchup was the only...
I missed that. I didn't see that. Did you post it? I missed that.
And I'm trying to figure out a sentence in which ketchup is used that the word before it and after it has to be redacted.
Well, it was because when Trump had the temper tantrum and they were cleaning ketchup off the walls in the White House.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
We haven't heard a lot in the news lately about the Jewish space laser. What happened? Did the aliens just take it out?
Yes, it's gone. It's gone.
It's gone.
It's redacted.
It's redacted.
Definitely redacted. And now, back to Light Talk.
All right. Well, the sound of those insane, crazed monkeys tell us that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about diversification of job skills and how to get trained in those skills. Well, it's funny we're talking about this because we were just talking about student loans, and and Steve had that great idea about the trade schools and have government support of them. Very socialist. I love it. And we're also talking
I'm
about
learning how to sell Amway right now, too. That's my diversification.
Yes, exactly. So, I think this is a great subject. And let's kick it off to Ellen. So, Ellen, how do you feel about this? I mean, what sort of job skills would you see in our industry? And let's keep it to our industry. Because we all know that
Clearly.
you're going to be working on it.
Well, starting with lighting, do all of your students come and want to be designers, or are they open to being technicians, programmers, and other things in the lighting industry, or are they all just being trained to be designers and then just sort of being sent out there, expecting someone else to be, the assistant, the associate, the paperwork person, the programmer, the technician, the master electrician? Does anybody teach people how to be a master electrician? I mean, where does, is that a skill? Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a skill.
And the other thing is, I think that the world is changing, and hybrid productions, virtual production, the metaverse, all kinds of interesting things are coming down the pike. And I think that the lighting designers are going to have to be ready for that. You're no longer maybe designing that pit may never be a question again. You may be in some, 100% LED floor wall, whatever, and the light just comes from wherever you put it digitally because, it's not real. So I think that there's a lot of stuff going on that people are going to have to be ready for. And I think that the design schools, first of all, really have to tell people that, you may never work on a Broadway theater. Broadway may be a dying art, who knows? But you may be able to work in clubs, festivals, all kinds of stuff. And maybe you don't, need to be so focused on being a designer. Maybe there are other areas of lighting that are appealing to you. So those are a couple of thoughts off the top of my head. We also, at LDI teach a lot of hands-on courses, Vectorworks and all kinds of other projection mapping and projection content creation and, how to be a screens producer and all kinds of stuff that may or may not be taught in a college setting. So there are a lot of options out there. And if you take a look at the LDI website, you'd be like flabbergasted at some of the weird stuff we're doing.
Well, it's not weird. It's used every day. Like I know that you
Right.
guys have workshops in like you said, projection mapping, but also in media servers. I mean, how to program a media
Right.
server. I mean, really, who
Exactly. How to
teaches
program.
that?
Right.
And
Right.
that is really important.
Right. We also do it's very popular, a 2-day project management course that, being a project manager. Like the companies like Fourwall and PRG, and they're always looking for project managers, people that can take it and, that have the technical skills, but can really take a project and budget it and run with it and make sure the scheduling is, done and that all the pieces come together. And, some of the people who do that in these big projects, like when a big show goes into a Las Vegas venue for a long sit down, there's a new one coming at the Wynn. In Las Vegas, and there are definitely all kinds of people who end up on those shows that are not necessarily like there's maybe a designer in terms of lighting, but then there's an entire crew. So what are those other positions and how do you learn to be them?
Right. Well, it's interesting because in my school, and I know in Steve's school as well, and certainly in Stan's, we do teach the students how to program, right? And hopefully on multiple different consoles. That's been going on for a long time. However, there are other skill sets that you really need to learn. I think that Ellen is totally correct with the ones that she mentioned, but there's also probably the most important person on a production when it comes to technology is the person who designs the data systems, right? The network flow. I mean, how the networks, talk to each other. And I know that we've had guests on our show who basically said that that's really what people need right now. That's what people are hiring, are people who understand all the network intricacies and can put networks together. And they may be working in rental places and manufacturers and things like that. But when you do a big Broadway show or a big Cirque show, I mean, there's so much data going on that it's really not as simple as a lot of people may think.
Right. It's like having an IT department for the show.
Right. Yeah. Because God knows I don't know anything about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You could come to LDI and take the full day Ethernet for entertainment course and learn a little bit about it.
Oh, I think every young person who's listening to the show right now needs to take that class. I am telling you.
Yep.
Because those people make a lot of money. They're like programmers. They make a lot of money. And that's because no one else knows how to do it. You'll always be in demand. Steve, how about you? What do you think? What skill sets do you think that students can actually earn a living and help pay off that $100,000 student loan?
Well, I think what the world is missing right now are really good assistants. I think there's money to be made there. I think if you're not interested in heavily following the trail laid out by you two in technology, I think it's being an assistant, being a great draftsman, being a great person in the theater to keep everything moving around the designer while the designer makes those decisions about the show. I think we overlook how important an assistant and how important an associate is on a big show.
Yeah, the problem is that in order to make money being an assistant, the designer needs to make money being a designer. And, those fees are not really, it's kind of hard to earn a living being an assistant unless you're one of the top assistants.
Maybe we're in the wrong industry. Maybe we should be turning our back on theater and moving into industrial and film and television. Maybe that is, look at the streaming that's going on right now.
Right, absolutely. That's what I'm saying, that, maybe, teaching kids that theater and Broadway are the only direction. That's what I said before about, clubs and corporate shows. And take a company like Light Switch, John Featherstone, Norm Schwab's company. And I believe John Featherstone started out as a concert lighting designer. Well, they do everything, including, LED wonderlands for nighttime garden parks and all kinds of things. And, architectural, corporate, industrial. And I think that you have to really broaden out not only what you know how to do, but where you're willing to do it.
It's interesting because I think there are, again, no villains here. I think there's students who want to specialize to the point that they have no future. Yeah. I'm only going to do opera. Well,
right. Good luck.
Good luck. And I think that was maybe true in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, but the world has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You need to know a lot about technology now. I probably wouldn't have made it had I started now. I don't know how successful I would have been.
Because?
Well, because I grew up at a time when you could specialize. I mean, I learned how to be a master electrician. I knew how to run a 2-scene preset. I knew that, but I was totally incapable of doing anything else in the theater. I mean, I could design lights. I could design costumes. Believe me, you don't want me in your costume shop. I already burned up a serger. I set one on fire by accident. So I'm just not skilled in that respect. Nowadays, if you want to be a lighting designer, you need to know not just design and art, but you need to know how to run systems. You need to know how to program. There's a lot of stuff there you need to know.
We certainly have a lot more choices than just a Leica and a Fresnel.
That's right.
Right.
And those choices are our moving target. They're changing constantly.
What about teaching? I mean, how many of your designer pals are like you guys, teaching and continuing to design? And then does that require a great design resume? Does it require a master's degree? Does it require a PhD? What do I do if I say, okay, I'd like the security? Is there a security in a teaching job at a university or a high school, and then I'll continue to design on the side?
That's a delicate balance. Thank God Steve and I have been able to navigate that. You need to be skilled to be a teacher. You need to know how to teach. And that doesn't come naturally. If you want to be a teacher, and we've had students come in who said, I want to get a degree, then we put them in a shadowing position until they reach a point where they feel confident and we feel confident. And then we have given grad students classes for like beginning lighting classes, things like that. But even then, there's a lot of mentorship involved, which is important because that's how you learn how to teach. But you need to be skilled to be able to teach.
Everything has changed a lot. We are taking our first class of freshmen in who haven't been in the classroom for 3 years.
Right.
Because of COVID. Mm-hmm. We've been Zooming these people. So it is a very strange world right now because these students have been on their own, so to speak, for 2 or 3 years. They haven't been interacting with a cohort. They haven't been really interacting with the teacher. They have been streaming university classes. So I think right now, I think there is a lot of remedial work going on on the undergraduate level, and probably on the graduate level too. You can only learn so much on your own by yourself, staring at a computer screen. I mean, I think it's tied to what we just talked about. Students are scared about student loans. They're desperate to hear and be told what is the next technology I need to learn. And then third, where can I take all this and get a job? It's an uncertain world for them because we've come out of the pandemic. People have disappeared from the job market all around the country. Companies have slashed their employee rosters down. The big rock and roll companies aren't quite as big as they were. It's just a scary world to be a student in right now. So it's difficult, I think.
On the other hand, a lot of companies are recruiting. PRG had a recruiting booth at LDI last year. One of the cruise ship companies is recruiting. The Meow Wolf people are recruiting as they keep opening immersive environments all over the country. So there are jobs out there. I think if you diversify your skills, you can get one.
So there we are. We're back to diversification.
Exactly.
And why that's everything has changed.
Right.
We're at that point now where diversification isn't an outlier. It is a normal part of your education.
Right. And I mean, look at what's happened, like, these digital environments. The lighting designer in there needs very specific skills, which are very different than perhaps even in terms of video on a stage. I remember it used to be, don't turn the lights up too much. You're going to wash out the video. And now it's like, oh, my God, turn that video wall down. I can't see my lights. So, right. Everything's changing. But I do believe in diversification. And if I were teaching right now, I would teach my kids, that Broadway is not necessarily the be all and end all. I would love to get someone on this show like Amara Isaacs, who's a producer of a show like Hadestown, and talk about the economics of Broadway and who hires who and how it all happens. And, the unions are asking for more money and the designers want larger fees and they can't add seats and they can't add performances and the building is empty almost all day long. And I think it's an interesting formula of how to succeed in the theater.
Look at just in our lifetime, you can now become a millionaire if you're a lighting designer. I mean, if you get the right show,
right?
You're making a lot of money.
As my friend Rick Fisher says, everybody needs a Billy Elliot.
Right.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
He deserved every penny he got on that show. That was a brilliant design. I loved Rick's work.
Absolutely.
Rick
brilliant.
is a great designer.
Absolutely
He really
brilliant.
is.
He is a wonderful designer.
Yeah, and a good guy.
Absolutely.
All right, so Steve has the last question of the day.
Yes, it comes from Susan in Wyoming. And she writes, I want to use candles on stage, but I worry about the visit from the fire marshal.
How much money do you have?
You should be worried about that visit from the fire marshal. Well, there's two things, or three things. First thing, whatever the fire marshal says is what you're going to have to live with. And you better not exclude the fire marshal from coming to your theater to look at your candle effect, because if he or she hears about it, it's going to be bad news if they come when the audience is there. First two things, real simplistic here. Flame proofing. The general rule of thumb on flame proofing is that all stage materials, everything within 5 feet of an open flame have to be non-combustible or treated with a fire retardant. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. So now you're doing Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth is walking across the stage with that candle in her hand. That means everything within 5 feet of where she is has to be non-combustible.
Including her costume.
Including her costumes. All of a sudden that big floppy sleeve on her nightgown, that's just the fire marshal's going to lose his or her mind over that. The second thing is most theaters have what's called as a fire watch. And basically that is typically someone on stage left, someone on stage right. They are trained, they've been checked out by the fire department, and they're sitting there watching where that effect is, and they've got a trusty fire extinguisher right beside them. So those are the two kind of things. If you can demonstrate that your candles aren't going to burn the theater down because things are flame-proofed or flame retarded, and you can demonstrate that your theater normally has a fire watch there. But if you're in a small town, the fire marshal is going to know that because you will have already had your fire watch stagehands go through their training procedure. Candles can be great, but there's other ways to do things these days. LEDs are quite spectacular and they can be quite nice. The problem is they can also be quite expensive to get something that looks great on stage. What about California? I was looking at the Los Angeles County Fire Department, and it's like that's a lot of text on flame proofing your stage.
And it changes from city to city. What we used to have, even if we had a live candle on stage, this is in Long Beach. When we had a live candle on stage, it had to be in an enclosed cylinder, right? And if it was like a glass cylinder, that's like, let's say, 7 inches high, and the candle's about 3 inches high, then you had to take a piece of tissue paper and place it on top of that cylinder with the flame going, and it could not catch fire within 1 minute.
Yeah, that magic number is, I think, 2 inches. I saw that on a hurricane glass.
Yes, exactly. Of course, if you have the money to hire some fire people, firemen and women, to be a part of the show, be there and stand by, yeah, you could put flame on stage with the okay of the fire marshal approval, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So, when you go to these concerts, you see this giant pyro happening, there are fire department people there, believe me. After the station fire in Rhode Island many years ago, and how many kids died in that, believe me, people got real serious when it came to, fire laws.
Yeah, I think the point is that we can't be too safe. We like to think nothing's ever going to happen because we're doing it, and somehow nothing bad will ever happen.
Right.
And there's a lot of bad things that will happen because people just say, well, I'll make an exception.
Right.
And when safety comes to play, you just can't make exceptions. You just can't make exceptions. So you should welcome the fire marshal, not dread the visit. He or she might have some ideas to how the effect can work if you don't know.
Right. And just make sure you have a $100 bill on you, just in case. No, don't do that. That's illegal. Don't do that. Maybe $500. I don't know what the going rate is nowadays. Don't fool with fires. Remember what Smokey says, Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent fire.
Call Snoot first.
Call Snoot first. All right, well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there, and check out our website on lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity. Oh, and by the way, if you want to join us and ask questions live on the show, then send an email to stank@icloud.com. That's STANKAYE@icloud.com, and he will give you all the information.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flocked, Flair, and Blair and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and Sistah, coming to you from Long Beach, St. Bart, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.